Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Radical Health, the show where we discuss all things related to health, including that which may seem radical to the Western mind. Now, today I have a very radical human with me. He is he's known for being a raw vegan stuntman, but he's much more than that. He's a student and teacher of natural law and the esoteric. He's a YouTube creator, lecturer, and teacher with some amazing videos and discussions. He is the leader and curator of his own group, the Free Melon Society, host of the Free Melon podcast, a man who proves it's possible to lead a high-performing, high-vitality lifestyle without meat, dairy, grains, salt, or anything cooked. We have Eli Martyr. How you doing today, my friend?
Hey, thank you so much for the intro. Yeah, I'm doing really well. Really happy to be here. Glad that we've got another opportunity to talk about this kind of approach to health, this true approach to health that obviously I espouse and I advocate for. And yeah, I'm just happy for the opportunity, my man. Thank you so much.
Right on. You're so welcome. Thanks for being here. Now, you just wrapped up a shoot on a film, right? How was that?
Yeah, it was great. We had a lot of fun. I was working with a whole bunch of my friends, longtime stunt guys and friends. And so it doesn't matter what job you work on. If you're with really close friends, then it starts to turn into a really, really enjoyable experience. So that's what it was. I was gone for about a month, like 3 weeks, maybe just over 3 weeks or so, and up in Winnipeg. I'm in Toronto. I live in Toronto. So short flight up to Winnipeg, and yeah, it was a great time. It was an action movie, so got to challenge ourselves with some fight choreography, some falls, and just all sorts of fun stuff. So it's always nice to go through that development process, and then in the end, when it's all said and done, you can relax, enjoy the film with your buddies, and it's a good time.
Right on. And do you have another one booked anytime soon?
In terms of feature films, as of right now, no, nothing that's on the schedule. This month, I have a lot of motion capture work for like video games.
Oh wow, very cool.
Yeah. So that's June. June has a bunch of those days, and then one other TV show booking for later on in the month. And as of right now, that's all I know.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I just want to do a quick recap of your story for listeners who may not know who you are. You've told your story many times on your show and other people's show, so I don't want to spend too long on it, but maybe you just correct me if I'm wrong here or interject anything you'd like to add, okay? So from what I understand, you grew up in Toronto, got into gymnastics at around 12 years old. You got into martial arts shortly thereafter. You tried a bunch of the different martial arts styles. You wanted to continue this study after high school, and you got into the university studying kinesiology, health sciences, and then you got an agent, started doing film work, stuntman work. So you started your career in film. And around that time, you were reading books, right? And really opening up your worldview, reading books on history, economics, conspiracy, right? Discovered Kevin Trudeau, and then some other health books, and natural hygiene works its way in. And this is sort of where you started changing what you ate and noticed a big shift in the health, right? So you were suffering with like chronic sinusitis, a lot of mucus, dry skin, and then went through some periods of fasting and changing the diet. And I love the story you told about like hunting a raccoon with a bow and arrow and having that crazy emotional impact on you, and how even the arrow was returned after it was shot into the raccoon and it ran away in agonizing pain, and it really affected you. You know, you went back to that spot later and found the arrow in the ground exactly where you're standing. Anyways, really cool story. If any of the listeners want to hear more, he talks a lot about that. But we can fast forward to today where you're eating fruits and vegetables, right? And you gave up cooked food for, more or less. Am I generally on track here with the story?
That is probably one of the best summaries of my past that I've heard from someone other than me.
Okay.
Very good work. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I don't have any corrections. That's bang on.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, there's a whole other aspect which I really appreciate about your work, that is the occult and natural law. And we're
Yeah.
going to get into that too. But I
Okay.
just kind of want to zoom in on some of the health and eating stuff right now. So can you think back to, like, at what point did you feel your physical health transform
hmm
once you started changing what you ate? Maybe once you started cutting out certain foods or introducing new ones. When was it that you first started to really internalize the changes and
Mm,
feel through experience that this is something that you'd like to continue with?
got it. Yeah, that's a great question. To find that line of demarcation from where you really know that things are changing for the better. I think I think I first really okay. I'll start with this. I noticed subtle changes fairly early. We're talking several weeks, maybe a month or two in. Okay, is when I'm starting to notice slight changes here or there. The first obvious changes that you'll notice is that your weight starts to drop a little bit, right? In my case, I always talk about it, but in my case, it was very obvious that the weight that was coming off was waste and not like fat and just muscle degrading away. As much as that might be the appearance or the what how someone else interprets that loss of weight, they might see someone getting slimmer and say, "Oh, what's happening? Are you sick or whatnot?" But I mean, I knew better. I was fairly well informed on the process, so I knew to expect that. So it wasn't a shock to me. And yeah, so that's one of the first things that I noticed right away. Okay, other things like your toilet odors, that's and just odors in general, that over time, over the next several weeks, you notice that change pretty much right away because you're changing what goes into your body. So what's going to come out is going to be, if it's not rotting and putrefying, right, in your gut, then you'll notice that fairly quickly. So there are little things like that I noticed. But when I think, um, internalized that I was making fundamental changes and my real true health was getting better was when I first realized how clearly I was and easily I was able to breathe. So the experience of breathing fundamentally changed from prior to making that shift. And I mean, I'll say 5 months or so, 5 months into the process. So around that time, that's when I started noticing when I would do my meditations, for example, or even just sitting in quiet contemplation, okay, or lying down on the bed, getting ready for sleep. The breathing channels started to open up, and that feeling like the full unencumbered flow of air through unencumbered nostrils. Oh my god, that was something that you just, as a kid, as a teenager, plagued with all this mucus and just like, oh, it can't be normal. It can't be normal for me to constantly be having this problem. To finally get that and to know that I can reproduce that effect if I so choose, day after day after day after day, by simply doing the right thing. All of a sudden, your mind um, apprehends a principle, and the second you apprehend a principle of reality, that empowers your decision making for the rest of your life. And so I'm starting to come to terms with this principle of eating and its effects on my breathing. And that was one of the very first elements of the shift that really solidified in my mind and my being that I am making positive steps in my overall spiritual and health evolution, right? So like that was like, okay, this has to be right. This has got to be right.
Yeah, I have to chime in and say that I experienced the same thing. That was the
Oh,
first big shift for me too.
okay.
I was someone who had chronic lifelong asthma, and I
Yeah,
have to take my inhalers every day, every single
yeah,
day. And
yeah.
I had two inhalers. I had like a preventative one and a rescue one. And when I look back, it seems like neither of them worked because I had to take them both all the freaking time,
Right.
and nothing was changing. But it was 3 days into a solid food vacation that I first noticed I did not have to use my inhalers. I
Mm,
was just doing juice and water, and I said, "Wow, I can breathe really good. This is
yeah,
amazing." And then
yeah.
it was as soon as I just felt comfortable in a month of high raw, never had to use my inhaler again since then.
That's it.
So it's insane. If anyone has breathing issues,
Hmm.
keep listening because you don't have to live with them. You really don't.
No.
Now,
Hmm.
Eli, you referred to, the process that you went through and doing the right thing health wise. What exactly is that? Like,
Right.
what did you cut out and what remains in your diet today?
Right. Right. Okay. So I cut out everything and anything that requires some sort of process before consumption, right? So I eliminated all of human the human influence on food. Now I understand we have agriculture and whatnot. Okay, please don't take that that little bit of info and take it to a place of absurdity. I know that we have agriculture and that human beings grow food and we send it to the market. Okay, you understand what I'm saying though. Stuff that doesn't need to be fundamentally changed from how it is produced by nature. Okay, so when you make that elimination, what inevitably you're left with the realization that you have to eat and structure your relationship to food in the exact same way that all of nature, the life forms on the planet, structure their relationship to food. You as a human being are not different just because we can intellectually escape that relationship. Just because we can doesn't mean we should, because our biology and our physiology is virtually unchanged, right? It's still that same relationship that nature seems to reproduce in all species. Okay, so I just wanted to give that context. So what happens when you eliminate processing of any kind from the picture? What you're left with is you're left with the result of relying on your taste senses to guide you in terms of what is acceptable food and what is not, right? I'll give you a very easy example. Salt, right? We talk about salt. If I take a spoonful of salt in my mouth, it's really an unpleasant taste. It's
It's
extremely
offensive.
unpleasant. It's quite offensive. Yeah, it's quite offensive. Now you usually don't find salt in that form really anywhere in nature. It's always packaged in some other type of medium, right? Some other type of medium. It's very difficult to get a spoonful of salt in nature. You might be able to pick up some mud or clay or something that's got salts in it or whatever, but you're not getting salt. So when you take that spoonful of salt, it's offensive. And what most people interpret from that is, oh, this salt is really offensive. Just a spoonful, just a spoonful. It's offensive in that form. So if I distribute it amongst a whole bunch of other flavors and spices and seasonings and other foods, then it must be good for me in that form, right? But that I would posit is the wrong approach. What you would want to do is you'd want to eat foods that are not objectionable immediately in their raw form, right? Because that's how nature has designed organisms. So to answer your question now, what do I eat? Right? I eat everything that can be eaten and that is palatable and can be eaten and digested in its raw, unadulterated form. So that leaves you with fruits. That leaves you with vegetables, leafy green vegetables. The soft leafy green vegetables are the primary type of vegetable that I would include in my diet. There are some of the softer starchless vegetables like carrots or celery or whatnot that people can include. That's part of it too. Agriculture has helped to make these more palatable. And nuts and seeds. So we're talking about fruits, the palatable vegetables, nuts and seeds. I would usually exclude from what is acceptable uh, the dense vegetables that are not palatable unless you cook them. When
Like
you
like
Yep.
maybe mustard greens or beets or something like that.
Yeah, you got it, right? You got it. If you can't bite into a beet, a dense beet, and chew it up and enjoy it, right? Like, when's the last time anyone did that for dinner? Just had a whole bunch of beets and go like,
Yeah, maybe
mm,
if it was boiled or roasted,
mm.
I would really enjoy it, but we're
Right.
not talking about that. We're talking about food in their pure raw state.
Exactly, exactly. And if in that state it's objectionable to your palate, to your sensitivities that nature has gifted you with, it that is information that your body intelligence is giving you about that food. And it would behoove of the person to not disregard that very, very accurate information and find some other way. Oh, I just need to boil it. Oh, I just need to cook it. Oh, I just need to juice it. I just need to mix it with this. I just need. No, you'd want to respect that and just accept the data, accept the conclusion that Mother Nature has immediately given to you, which is that beet is not for you. It's for some other organism whose physiology allows it to comfortably and wonderfully eat that food and take it in and enjoy it, right? But it's very difficult for us to digest, and it's difficult to digest because initially we reject it, right? Or not because we reject it, but we reject it because innately our body knows that we'll have trouble digesting it. So it doesn't gear you with sensitivities that make eating a raw beet a wonderful experience. It makes it unpleasant so as to incentivize you to not eat it. But you eat that mango that we were talking about earlier, I think before we started recording this. You eat some mangoes, you eat some watermelon, your senses love and relish that. They tell you, they encourage you, please eat this, please, please, please. And that is done for a very good reason. It's because that's what you're supposed to eat. So in truth, there's nothing radical about what I'm doing. When you think about it, it's like, oh my gosh, this guy's just eating in a way that should be normal, like so common sense, right? So common sense, but common sense has been stifled under the weight of human convention and luxury and indulgence and market, and business and capitalism and all this kind of stuff. So all that has come in the way, and this food business has just interfered with the true relationship that human beings are supposed to have with food.
100%, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you say about aligning with nature. And also, you're so right that humans try to intellectually justify or intellectually change the situation to make it seem like, oh no, this is part of our diet. Like
Right.
you said, we just got to juice it, we just got to cook it, we just got to combine it.
Yeah.
The salt is good for us because for whatever reason people
For whatever
think.
reason. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if one spoonful of it is offensive, then what is that really telling you, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
and I gotta you said there's nothing radical about what you're doing, but I'd like to just read a couple definitions of radical
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
because what you're doing may very well be radical.
Yeah.
So, arising from or going to a root source or basic,
Hmm.
right? Because like
Hmm.
rad or like a radii, like a
Yeah.
straight line from the center of a circle.
Right.
So
Right.
maybe
Right.
you are returning to this root source of nature.
Right.
Here's another definition: departing markedly from the usual or customary, extreme or drastic. Well, when you look at the
Right.
standard American diet, yeah, what
Yes.
we're doing is extremely radical. And I love this third definition: relating to or advocating fundamental or revolutionary changes in current practices, conditions, or institutions.
Mm.
So, okay,
Right.
maybe according to like
Right.
in relation to nature, eating watermelon for breakfast is not radical. But in a world where everyone's eating croissants, coffee, bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches, it is most definitely radical. And we need that. We need more radical people like you, man. Now, someone may be listening and think like, oh, just fruits and vegetables. That's so limiting. That's so restrictive. And I'd like to argue that is anything but. You could eat fruits and vegetables exclusively for the rest of your life, 3 meals a day, and never once repeat yourself with a menu, right? Just think about the
Yeah.
different combinations of how many fruits there are. I mean, there's 10,000 varieties of tomatoes alone. So you could have watermelon for breakfast. You can have plantain coconut milk smoothie for lunch. You can have a big salad with greens and berries, right? And a hemp seed dressing. And that's one day. The next day, you can have something completely different. You can be having durian. You could be having papayas, right? Blueberries, strawberries. There's an endless, literally endless supply of fresh fruits and vegetables on this earth. And they were designed like that, right? One seed in the watermelon out of how many? Sometimes they have 500 seeds in them. Those are all going to produce infinite more fruits. So when you think about it, nature really did provide us with what we need. And all this scientific processing seems to be what's getting everybody sick. So we got to look and say, okay, well, is what we've been doing for the last 100 years, the last 200, last 1,000, last 12,000 years, has that been working? Are we in a good place in humanity or not? I had to
Yeah.
interject that
Yeah.
thing about radical because I think we are radical and we should embrace that, right?
I'm glad you did. Yeah, I'm glad you did because honestly, if there's one big problem out there, it's definitions, imprecise use of language. It confuses the crap out of people. It really really does mess up our ability to place things in their proper correct categories. And when there's conflation, you breed confusion by default,
Mm-hmm.
right? I say dog to you, and what I really mean is window. Communication sucks, right? It's just going to be all over the place. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. And great thoughts. Yeah, really really great thoughts on the state of affairs.
Yeah, words are huge, definitions are huge. Language is so
Yeah.
important because it shapes our reality, it shapes our consciousness. It's
Mm.
not just a way to
Hmm.
communicate, it's actually the foundation of how we think. So I
Yeah.
love how you're creating the videos online. Like one of the latest series you just put out is called The Hijacking of Veganism, How Evil's Greatest Trick Fooled You Again. This is like a 5-hour documentary series in 3 parts.
Yeah.
It's pretty epic, but in there you really break down some of the common conceptions and misconceptions about veganism, about environmentalism, about the green movement, right? About governments. We're going to get into that. I really want to discuss that video, but we're going to save that
Mm.
as well. Let's transition a bit now into your training and work. I'm really curious about what is your physical training like? Do you have a schedule or is it more intuitive? And maybe could you talk a little bit about how you prepare for a film if you have a shoot coming up where you need to be in tip top physical shape? Just give me a little bit about your preparation and training.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. So a lot of my training is right now is geared towards movement, fighting, acrobatics, and mobility. Okay, so I'll give you. Let's just say in the morning. Let's just say a typical morning. I might I might get up and do generalized strength and mobility work and scatter it throughout the day. So I try to be mobile and using my body throughout the day at different periods. If I'm doing a lot of video editing, then I might do take breaks, take little breaks, and do sets of very very challenging handstand push-ups. Let's just say, or I might do some weighted mobility kind of lunges, or I might do some different types of hand balancing or other types of strength challenges, planche drills, um, bridge drills, going to a bridge, doing push-ups and moving around, just keeping it moving and working on different elements that are useful for film. Okay, and of course for fun and for myself, just because it's very liberating to be mobile, mobile and able-bodied, right? So I partly do them for fun, but I also do it because that's what helps me with my with my career in film. So I do traditional, or not traditional, but calisthenics. So lots of calisthenics, and also weighted or very difficult, very challenging calisthenics. Okay. I also incorporate traditional strength training when I can, less often. So maybe once a week. If I'm really busy, then less often than that. Maybe once every week and a half or once every 2 weeks. Sometimes twice a week, but that's a bit more rare. Then I will do traditional strength training where I'll find a gym. I don't even need a gym to do this traditional strength training. I'm just saying if I have it available to me, then I don't mind using traditional gym equipment, and I'll do some strength training, like super intense to going to complete failure on all the different types of activities and exercises that target different muscle groups. I'll take them all to failure. Very, very, very tiring, very exhausting. Okay. So you're wiped by the end of a workout. But I won't do that. I won't do that very often. That's just that, like I said, once a week, most of the time. The rest of the week, I'm doing what I just described earlier. Challenging strength training, drills, calisthenics, movements, rolls, acrobatics. I have a facility that I go to where I train acrobatics, and I can work on all the other elements that I just mentioned. But I never do those to complete exhaustion. So I'm never going near the point of complete failure or exhaustion. I'm keeping it very fresh and letting myself recover very well between each of these little exercise snacks, you could say. And so I try to avoid exhaustion, except for those one-off days where I'm doing strength training to absolute failure, right? So that's kind of what it looks like. The general idea is incorporating a lot of challenging movements and mobility movements, mobility challenges scattered throughout the day, but not so that I'm getting tired or getting fatigued or exhaustion, nothing till failure, just very, very quick. So example, let's just say I talked about handstand push-ups. Let's just say I go on the stairs and I do some deficit handstand push-ups. I might do, they're really, really challenging for me, right? I'm no crazy beast athlete. So for me, they're challenging. So if I do 1, 2, then I'll stop, and then stop the exercise before I get tired. Wait 10 minutes, 12 minutes, try it again a little bit later, and then try something else. Maybe do some like a middle split drill, like holding weights and holding a middle split drill. Do some movements, and then go back to video editing, and so on and so forth throughout the day. Right.
Right. I like that. I like how you respect your body's limitations and only go to failure about once per week.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like to go to the gym and try to go to failure all the time, but then they get injured. They're sore constantly. It makes it hard to work out the next day.
Yeah.
But that's something I've been playing with too, is kind of throughout the day working out. If I'm trying to increase my pull-up rep maximum, what I found works the best is actually doing very low reps but high sets throughout the day. So I'll do one pull-up every 30 minutes, right? Or 2 pull-ups every hour. Yes. And 12 hours later, I just did 24 pull-ups, but no soreness whatsoever.
Right.
Very little fatigue. I can do it the next day. And what I've noticed is that actually increases my rep max like within one day sometimes. If you're careful about introducing these low intensity sets, then it can actually do wonders for the body. So that's cool. I like that. And I like mixing the mobility work with the strength. And so it sounds like it's kind of intuitive for you, right? You don't have like a plan or programs that you do much. You kind of let your body dictate what's happening that day.
Yeah, you got it. I kind of just intuitively go through it. Some days I'll be more so focused on acrobatics than actual strength training. Other days it'll be more focused on strength training than acrobatics, right? I kind of just play with it. I use all of them, right? When I'm at work, all those skills come in handy, and familiarizing my nervous system with all of these different types of things, it's all helpful. But I mix it up every day, basically. Try something else here. Some days it's more fighting training, right? Working on different kicks, incorporating acrobatics into martial arts. So, okay, I'll give you an example. Just the other day, I'm at my training facility. Well, not my training facility, the one that I go to. And one of the things I was just playing with is, okay, how can I transition this weird looking acrobatic move into something that looks like an attack of some sort, or that looks like a kick, or that looks like a punch? Or how can I go from like a traditional, boxing combo into a kick into an acrobatic move, right? That's the stuff that's very interesting to bring to the table when it comes to designing action scenes. And so you train that kind of stuff as a stunt performer. So I mix it up. Yeah, that's the idea. I mix it up and then sprinkle in a little bit of, hard strength training to failure once in a while, and then give yourself plenty of recovery. When you're recovering from those hard to failure strength sessions, some people might get the idea that in order to recover, they need to do nothing. That's not the case. You don't need to do nothing. In fact, general movement is good. It can help your recovery, so long as you don't push yourself to the max and try to send those signals for growth that come from extreme intensity. So you just wouldn't want to do that. So long as you avoid that, you can still move around, you can train, you can even do strength training, but as long as you don't take your body to that point of exhaustion, then you'll still be recovering.
Right on. It
Yeah.
sounds like you are playing when you're training, that there's this
Playing,
element of
yeah.
creativity and play.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, you got it.
I think that's really important to anything, but especially in physical activity. People like to look at the gym as like, oh, I got to do it. I got to grind. This is work, and they
Mm-hmm.
show up and they do their repetitive motion, and it may be taxing on the body. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people do have a sense of play and creativity when they're working out, but I see a lot of non-creative, just like grinding in the gym. But
Mm.
to bring a sense of play to anything is going to
Yeah.
make it so much more fun,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because then you're co-creating, right? You're having fun. You're rolling around on the floor like a kid again. So
Sure.
is that important to you in your work and in your training?
Very important. It's important in my work and training, but I'll say even more importantly than that, it's good for my mental attitude and my disposition towards life. For example, if a grocery store makes the mistake of making me wait in line too long for the checkout, I'm going to start playing in line because I'm just standing there for too long. And I'm like, all right, I need to do something fun. Kids will see me just exploring, moving around, trying to balance on my, on my shopping cart, doing like a pistol squat in line and just messing around, doing some sort of ankle rotation, doing like an interesting squat. Sometimes it's happened a couple of times where kids are like, oh, and they come and join me and try to do the same thing, and they're just laughing and playing. And all the adults who are much too reserved and much too caught up in social propriety to be caught dead doing anything like that. They're all looking, but you can tell they're like, oh, that looks like that human being's having fun, right? And he is having a lot of fun, and it's so yes. So even out there in the world, being able to have a mindset where you can just play. Like if I'm taking a walk and there's an interesting tree that I want to climb, it's really fun and liberating to actually be able to act on that impulse and just see if you can climb it, see if you can challenge yourself to do some sort of challenging strength maneuver to get up a tree. Like, I mean, this is life, right? This is how you express your physicality, and it cultivates a very good attitude, a very stable and confident attitude in a person. And yeah, so I would say just in life in general, I still have this playful approach, and it's I'd call it a blessing. I really enjoy it.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, in your work as a stuntman, are your coworkers, the producers, directors, filmers, and even your fellow stunt people, are they
Mhm.
aware that you don't eat cooked food, that you only eat fruits and vegetables? Like, how aware are they of your eating practices?
This is funny. So after a while, it started to become notorious in the industry. There are people that I get approached all the time now. Basically, every set that I work on, there are people always approaching me like, "Hey, you're that fruit guy. Hey, you're that fruitarian guy. Hey, you're. Is it true that you only eat fruit? I heard." And then there's a broken telephone. There's all these legends, right? I heard that you only ate oranges for 2 years. I heard that you. I'm like, no, no. I mean, it's true. Yes, I'm that fruit guy, but I didn't eat oranges for 2 years. Like, so it's just so funny, and it started to get quite notorious. So yes, basically everybody knows that I do this, and I'll answer questions. People get very curious, very interested, and yeah, I'll very often do question and answer when I'm at work, like routinely. But it's great. Like most all my friends, they've been around me forever. They accept it. It's just part of who I am, and everyone's cool with one another. I'm cool with them. I don't. What they eat doesn't bother me. It doesn't disrupt our friendship in any conceivable way. It's been enough time. Enough time has elapsed now where this has incorporated itself into my being, and everyone accepts that. In the beginning, there was a bit of uh, a little bit of fear, worry, confusion as I'm just making this transition. All of a sudden, I'm losing all this weight. I look different, and so people are strained, or they're just a bit worried. But then year two goes by, three, four, five, six, seven, and I'm functioning very, very well. Then noticing that I move well. I'm still like very active, still strong, still. And so then eventually, like, okay, well, obviously something right is going on, right? So eventually they just accept it.
Yeah. You mentioned a decent amount of time going by. How long
Mhm.
has it been now since you've been on the raw fruit lifestyle or raw
Right.
raw food lifestyle?
So by the end of the summer, it'll be 9 years.
Cool.
9 years now. Yep. Yeah,
In
nine
that
years.
time, have you met any doubters? Anyone who's like, no, there's no way you only eat fruits and vegetables?
Yes. 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 I've definitely met some doubters. I've definitely met people. Yeah. Lots of incredulous people who are just like, no, 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 come on. Like you can't be doing that. You're doing something. You're having some supplements, using some supplements. You're cooking food from time to time. I've been accused of eating fast food from time to time. Yeah, everyone, you're going to run into these types of people no matter what you do, no matter how convincing you try to be. You'll never you'll never make believers in what you do out of everybody. It's just the way it is.
Right. And it's not even necessarily our job to convince people. It's just our job to be ourselves.
Not at all. Exactly. Exactly. You just own exactly what you are, what you want to be, right? What makes you feel good, what you feel is best. You just live that, own it, and if people are interested, they'll ask you, and if not, then they don't. Then that's who cares. It's fine. You're just if you know we are fundamentally doing something that is quite different, like we said before, and so it's going to attract the interest of other people who are aspiring to do similar things, right? To clean up their diets and to have health unfold in their bodies and their minds in the best way possible. And so when they see an example of people doing that, then yeah, you inspire interest, and that's a wonderful thing. And for people haven't who haven't gone about a course of interests, right? Who haven't put their energies into researching or looking at the same types of things, and they're not attracted to that quite yet, then that's all well and good, right? We're not here to force anybody to do anything. It's you're just living by example, and of course doing what's best for you.
Love it. And you
Yeah.
made a great point that most everybody wants the same thing that we're after, which is
Hmm.
health,
Hmm.
harmony with nature,
Yeah.
to an extent, I think, and ability, physical ability to be able to do pistol squats and,
Right. Right.
handstands and to play like a kid and to climb trees. We all want that, the physical ability, the health, and the lining up with nature. And that's kind of why I asked you, it's like, are your coworkers aware? And do you get any doubters? Because a lot of times people will see this, because I was exposed to raw veganism in college. I had a college math professor who was raw vegan, and he was a
Mm.
high performing athlete. He was a long
Mm.
distance runner, really
Yeah.
fit, in shape, high energy guy. But we all looked at him sideways, just like, who is this weirdo? He's just munching kale all day, because we only saw him eat cabbage wraps. Like that seemed to be what he liked to eat for lunch around the time
Right.
we had math class.
Right.
And so I just didn't know how much fruit played into his diet. We weren't too curious. We were all just really skeptical, actually, thinking
Mm.
this guy's weird, or he must be a freak, or this isn't going to last.
Yeah.
He'll hit a wall eventually. It's just not going to last. But
Yeah.
as the years go on, I'd meet more and more long term fruitarians and raw vegans, and I aspire to be one myself, not
Hmm.
because of some look or some influence
Yeah.
online.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like anyone else. I want to be me. I want to be aligned with nature. I want that perfect health, right?
Yeah.
That pristine health that
Yes.
is our birthright, I believe. And so
Right.
at this point in my life, it seems like raw fruits and vegetables provide us with everything, especially living here in South Florida, where we get mame sapote, we get white sapote, we get all sorts of plantains
Oh.
and red bananas. And granted, you can get those other places in the world, but we can get them extremely fresh. And
Hmm.
there's just so much variety. It's kind of easy to do this lifestyle down here with so much variety, so much high quality, nutrient density. It's such a annoying buzzword sometimes, but it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder, like, has anybody who's worked with you been influenced to the level of coming to you eventually and saying, "Hey, man, I cut out meat recently, or I cut out salt, or I'm starting to actually think about what I'm doing, or like, you'll pass me some of those grapes." Like, have
Yeah.
you seen any rippling um, in work? I'm specifically curious about not the person at the grocery store or your friend from childhood. I'm curious about like the film industry.
Mm.
Have you
Mm.
noticed anyone kind of pick up on what you're doing and try it themselves?
Only yes, other stunt performers. Yeah, so other stunt performers, because I work with them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they see how I live. They see what I'm eating. Well, on set, it's mostly what I'm not eating. Right, that's most of the time what they're seeing, and they're also seeing my level of functioning. Right, my ability to endure through days of set, that everyone seems to need things to get through, all sorts of things, whatever it is, whether it's painkillers, whether it's, 7, 8, 9 cups of coffee in
Wow.
a shift, right? In let's just say a crazy 15-hour shift, right? Which is a ridiculous shift to work. Um, in the last job I just came from, yeah, we were shooting nights, so we would have a shift that starts at, I don't know, 3 in the afternoon or so, go till 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, right? So yeah, those types of shifts, they're long and they can weigh on you. But my point is, my coworkers will see that I'm kind of effortlessly getting through these without, sometimes without eating, or very often without eating anything, or with only eating my lunch, which I bring to set, which is just some fruit, and that's it. No other snacking too much. If I do snack, it might be, a banana or something, or an orange. But yeah, so people notice this, and of course they get curious, right? So you get questions, and then eventually I hear about, oh, I'm dealing with this trouble, I'm dealing with that trouble, I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight here, and so yeah, I'll help them. I'll talk them through what they need to hear, and so there have been a couple of my friends who have tried to incorporate different elements of what I'm trying to convey in their lifestyle. So yes, in that sense, yeah, you do have people that will be interested, but in terms of who has I've been able to rub off on in that sense, it's only been people in the stunt community that I know of.
Right on. That's cool. So if someone is inspired to make a change in their diet, but they've been eating standard stuff their whole life, would you have any tips for transitioning? Because to go straight from cheeseburgers to grapes, for example, to make it very general, it's probably going to cause a lot of digestive upset. The stomach and the guts and the whole body really does need a transition period, from what I've noticed. A lot of people can kind of flip a switch, especially if their back is up against the wall health wise. A lot of people need to kind of make a drastic shift. But for any normal person who's not experiencing like acute conditions, but is interested in cleaning up the diet, what would you suggest to look into? Or would you incorporate fasting? Do you incorporate transition meals? Do you think slowly tapering off is good? Or what kind of mindset do we have to go into transitioning toward more raw plants?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so the first thing that I would say, okay, is so critical. You have to have a very, very, very sharp awareness of the reasons why you want to move away from those things. That is primary. You need to have that bedrock kind of set in stone. What is wrong with this hamburger that I'm eating, right? That has to be all the reasons why this is offensive to you and why you don't want this to be incorporated into the version of yourself that you want to see show up. You have to know that inside out, right? Know about each of the elements in this burger, know how they're stimulating, know how they're actually fooling you, right? You have to learn that what you're doing is actually a trick, right? Like that has to be solidified in your mind. Unless you know that you're being fooled, like imagine someone laughing at you on the other side of this burger and like, just with a big grin on their face going, yes, come buy my burger, you slave to your, you have to imagine that this industry is out there to deceive you, right? So you have to know that and know that it's doing that through controlling your senses. Okay. That knowledge and awareness, hyper awareness of all the reasons why you want to avoid what you're doing, that is crucial. Okay. So get informed, first of all. That's step number one. Okay. Once you are informed, it's easier for your mind to adopt a new idea like in a flash, a couple of days of researching and you can get a lot of information. It takes a lot longer for your physical body to catch up with the new structure that your mind has just taken on. Yeah. So what I would say is find ways to incorporate some degree of simplicity into what your current diet plan already is. So let's take that hamburger, for example. Let's just say I'm the standard American dieter. I eat hamburgers, I eat French fries, I mix it all together in the evening, whatever it is. Okay, I've got that hamburger. That hamburger is a combination of all sorts of nonsense. First of all, we've got the meat itself, which is a conglomerate of a whole bunch of different types of meat in the first place, right? So there's that. Just the patty, there's complexity. Go figure.
Not to mention those cows were probably fed antibiotics. They were fed corn, and they were given all sorts of pharmaceuticals too.
Yeah, we're talking all sorts of nonsense, and we haven't even made it through a fraction of what constitutes the burger, right? So we got the patty, we've got the bread on top of that. The bread also has a bunch of sesame seeds on it. That's considerable. There's then, of course, the ingredients in the bread itself. Okay, so now we're down to a laundry list of ingredients just on its own. All the condiments, all the toppings, all the ingredients in the condiments, the ketchups and the mustards and all sorts of stuff. So what I could do is I could say, all right, I need to simplify this. I've got concentrated starches, concentrated proteins, and concentrated fats all in the same mouthful. So what I would do is maybe say, okay, let's just say out of all these elements, I like the bready component the most. That's my thing. Maybe I say, okay, how about I have some whole wheat pasta or any kind of I don't care, any kind of pasta, just pasta, and then a bunch of other vegetables with it, as whatever vegetables you want. You can cook them, you can steam them, whatever it is. But pasta, maybe a nice tomato sauce, a whole bunch of vegetables, make it taste good. You can season it if you want with some herbs and spices or whatever, but just make it rich. You're still getting some of that concentrated food that you're accustomed to, but it's a bit simpler. It's just a bit simpler. You've reduced the amount of complexity by about 50% just by eliminating all of these variables in the amount of things that you're eating at one time. And that invites more simplicity into that particular meal. And then you stay on that new achieved level of simplicity in your diet for a little bit of time, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. And then whenever you decide that you're going to add another element of simplicity, then that's what you do for the subsequent week. And then stay there until it's comfortable and easy, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. That approach is if you're not suffering from any kind of critical lifestyle related disorders that are going to really hurt you. You so far as you can detect, you're just a regular functioning human being. Then you can take that kind of slow and very gradual and easy approach where your body isn't going to immediately start rebelling against you, right? Mm-hmm. And you can trick your body by the strategy of gradualism to slowly get to where you want to be. That's a great approach because you don't really skimp out on your taste pleasure, because there's always a way to get a very similar but different, right? But very similar taste pleasure by adding another layer of simplicity, or by finding a replacement for something that's worse. There's always a way. There's always a way to do that.
That's huge. I love those techniques, actually. The whole knowing the why is so big.
You have to.
If that's not there, then there's no wind in the sails. You've set up a sailboat and there's nothing pushing the boat, and you're going to just get right back on shore because there's no wind. There's nothing actually fueling what you're doing. So the information is huge. That's why I do what I do too. You don't have to look at my page. You don't have to listen to my podcasts, but if you'd like to, I put a lot of information in there that we can then use to make our own decisions.
Right.
So that's great. And what you're saying about still hitting the taste buds, but simplifying the meals, I've done that intuitively. I didn't really realize that what I liked about cheeseburgers, since we're still on that topic, was actually the tomatoes, the lettuce, and the mustard. Because one day when I wrapped tomato in lettuce and dipped it in mustard and ate, I said, oh my God, I feel like I'm eating a cheeseburger. This is the exact feeling I had when I was doing that.
Right.
So it's the crunchy, it's the juicy, it's the sweet, it's the refreshing nature of those veggies that they're supposed to accent the centerpiece of the meal, which is the patty. But to me, it's I never actually liked that. That was just extra to the vegetables. So
Sure.
And then another example is I wanted to make a really simple, Mexican inspired thing. So I had corn, tomatoes, and avocado.
Nice.
Those three things. I may have even chopped up a little bit of green onion.
Sure.
And they were all raw. It was like sweet corn. This is the type of corn you could eat raw. It was sweet corn, and the tomato was fresh, and avocado. And I was like, wow, I really feel like I'm eating a burrito. This actually gives me the same, I actually don't need the rice and the beans or the meat or anything like that. So that's interesting. I was kind of doing that intuitively.
What did you, what did you use to wrap that up?
Oh, I literally just ate it with a fork out of a.
Oh, you just ate it with there you go. It's the taste, because it's the taste that you're going for, and you can get that with those combination of ingredients. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. It was like a burrito bowl, super simple. Again, I think we were talking off air. What people like about meat is it's sweet and juicy, usually, but those are the things that fruits have naturally. That has to be added to the meat. Right. If you go and rip a chicken's head off and try to eat it, you're not going to experience sweet and juicy flavors.
No,
you're just not.
No.
So I love that. Cool. Knowing the why, bolstering the awareness, and then simplifying and giving yourself grace to transition and not try to flip a switch just at once.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's always a way to either simplify or to make what you're eating less offensive. Right? There's always a way. You can do a wrap. I was talking about wheat products. I mean, you can take a bunch of plantains and boil them, just boil them, and then crush them into a paste, just with a press of some sort, and then put that on the skillet and make a wrap made of just plantain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can get there's tons of ways. There's tons of ways to do this, right?
Yeah. And speaking of plantains, I actually learned this from your channel years ago,
Mm.
where
Mm.
you're like, hey, everybody, you can eat plantains raw.
Yeah.
All you got to do is wait till they're completely black
Yeah.
and soft and mushy. And I was like, oh, that looks weird. But then
Yeah.
I tried it and I said, holy crap, this is like the most delicious banana I've ever had. This is like better than any banana I've ever. And I've had Thai bananas, I've had red bananas, I've had Burro and Orinoco. I've had plenty of varieties of epic bananas.
Right.
A ripe black plantain from the supermarket.
Oh.
That's like one of my favorite things now. I'll just make a smoothie out of that.
Oh yeah.
Wow. So actually, I learned a couple tricks from your YouTube channel. The other one was honeydew melons and golden dew melons, like letting those get soft and finding ones in the grocery store that have a sweet aroma and a softness to them. And actually, that was some information that I ended up, putting into practice, finding out, oh, this is true. The ones that smell better taste better. The ones that are a little bit softer, they go down easier.
Right.
And I started taking notes on how to pick out ripe fruits. And that actually became my book, The Fruit Companion.
Oh, beautiful.
But thank you for that type of info on your channel, because this is the kind of stuff a lot of people don't know, is how to eat fruit, right? Mm-hmm. They look at a plantain and go, well, that's green and starchy and I like it fried and I can't eat it raw because it's disgusting. Right. Well, all you got to do is wait 2 weeks and then that thing will be black. So how did you discover that? How did you discover eating raw plantain, for example?
Well, okay. You know what? It was because I was already familiar with the principle, right? I knew that the fruit family in general tends to ripen, and then when it's ripe, you eat it. And I knew, I've heard of plantains. I tasted, cooked plantain before, but it kind of just bugged me that I don't know about needing to cook it. Is there something else going on here? A couple of times, because I shop at a lot of ethnic grocery stores, international grocery stores. Okay. And so sometimes they had the bargain bins filled of plantains that were getting riper. And a bunch of them were just so cheap. And I'm like, oh, I just tried a couple. And then I noticed that the ones that had more black spots on them were much better tasting, and they were softer than the ones with less black spots. And then so I just, okay, what if I go for more black spots? And then I might have seen a video of someone eating a banana at some point, or a plantain, excuse me, and then just tried it. And like, oh my gosh, this is something else. Like yourself, when I first tasted a plantain, that was actually black all the way around, 100% black. Holy moly, what a flavor. What a flavor.
Yeah.
You guys got to try that if you haven't tried it.
It's pure dessert. It's like,
oh yeah.
I'm not too familiar with the different types of desserts out there, but it just feels like you're eating something that was made with cream and sugar and banana concentrate. Yeah. But it just grew on a tree.
Right. And you absorb it better, right? You digest it with a lot more ease. People get scared because it's sweet, because it's so sweet. But you have to understand, your taste buds are designed like that for a reason. It's because you're supposed to go after the things that are sweeter, very often indicative of their higher calorie content, which is what you would want if you're just living on the land. Right? So you're designed to seek things that satisfy that, right? Mm-hmm. So people get confused because they know that the sugar is bad thing, and they get all in their heads about things that contain sugar, and then they conflate the experience of sweetness to being bad with all things. And it's that conflation of terms and categories that we get it messed up, right? Donuts are bad for you, so therefore ripe plantains are bad for you. No, this is different. It's not the same thing.
Exactly. And for anybody listening who wants to try the plantain thing, I recommend letting it get almost mushy, like soft. So completely black, no more yellow, and soft. And as long as there's no mold, you're good. And even so, if I have some that just mold a little bit on one side, you just cut that off. It doesn't mold throughout the rest. You don't get sick afterward.
Exactly.
Humans are designed or evolved or adapted. It doesn't really matter. We exist to love sweet food. We have a sweet tooth, right? And that's because the natural food in our existence for humans is sweet. It's almost like this is where information can hurt us, and we can have too much information. Like if you try to tell a bunch of spiders that, oh, the blood that the mosquitoes are eating is actually bad for you, then is that going to scare the spider into not eating the mosquito? No, because they don't listen to science. They literally just intuitively act upon what they know how to do in nature, which is to catch mosquitoes and suck their guts out after they wrap them in a cocoon.
Yeah, that's it.
So humans are the same way. We are programmed, whether it's evolved or adapted or designed, it almost doesn't matter in this case, to enjoy sweet food.
Yeah.
We have the color vision to be able to see the fruits, whereas carnivores, they see more motion because they're predators and they need to chase down animals.
Yeah.
We see color. We have a finely tuned sense of smell to smell sweet things and reject putrid odors. Even down to our jaw, we have lateral jaw movements that carnivores don't have. Their jaws just go up and down. So we have jaws that enable us and flat teeth to crunch roughage and crunch plants.
Right.
So anyways, humans are frugivores. We don't have to get too into that, but it's just funny how so much information can get people thinking that we shouldn't be eating sugar. But it's like, that's the problem with soda, right? Soda pop is high fructose corn syrup, which in itself is a disaster. I mean, just genetically modified monoculture, completely reduced and industrially synthesized, basically, sugar. That'll wreck your body. But listen, the sugar found in watermelon and ripe plantains, that is the perfect sugar for us. It's fructose, it's glucose. Fructose doesn't cause the insulin spikes. Glucose is absorbed directly by the bloodstream and converted directly into energy. You've been eating fruit for, what'd you say, 9 years at this point?
Yeah, almost. Not yet, but almost.
No diabetes, huh?
No. No, not at all. And guys, I mean, if you feel that that's the key to diabetes is eating fruit, sweet fruit. You were just talking about eating moldy plantains. Guys, I've eaten more moldy plantains than probably the average person has in a lifetime. Not moldy, you throw away the ones that have mold all over them, but like you said, a little bit of mold on the outside surface of the skin, that doesn't mean anything. The actual flesh underneath is quite well insulated from the mold on the outer skin of the plantain. And speaking of plantains, and you can still eat these things. Yeah. Anyway, no diabetes. It's funny because sometimes you probably have heard this. People will say, "Oh, okay, but all that fruit is cultivated fruit, right? It's agriculturally grown." You'll hear people just again conflate and say this is all man-made fruit, right? They'll say all that, and therefore you shouldn't eat it. My question is always very simple. It's like, okay, let's just assume that that's the case, that you're right. What is the alternative? Is the alternative to now eat things that are not designed for your species? That's a better option. They never specify what are the alternatives if you're throwing away fruit and vegetables. And I'm like, okay, well, what shall we subsist on? Oil and eggs, duck fat, and carcasses. Like, is that what we're supposed to eat? Well, I mean, it doesn't really make sense. If that spider, that very same spider, if you told them, hey, those mosquitoes that you're catching, those were grown on a mosquito farm. man-made, agriculturally grown. You shouldn't eat the mosquitoes. What is the spider going to say? Is it going to say, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I should be eating burrito wraps instead. I should be eating. No, it's going to continue to eat what it's supposed to eat by nature. That's just because that's what it does.
Yeah.
So it's funny whenever I hear that, I'm like, okay, well, what is the alternative? To violate now your nature's rules and protocols and eat what's not optimized for your body?
Right.
Well, that sounds a bit silly too. Right?
And the people who make that argument too of, oh, all fruits and vegetables are man-made at this point, they're not out there on a homestead only eating the cows that they raise and kill themselves. No,
Yeah,
they're going to the grocery store and the
exactly.
fast food chain just as much as anybody.
I know.
Subsisting off the same stuff that they're trying to tell you shouldn't eat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is actually a great segue, because here we are debunking some common myths about food. And what I love about your YouTube channel is that you do a lot of debunking about the common myths and misunderstandings in either the vegan movement or environmentalism, especially with this last documentary series you made. So, you could be content with working on your films, living your lifestyle, working out, posting videos, but you go beyond that and you try to actually really deliver this information that's going to help humanity, I think, understand and make better decisions, move forward. And a big part of that is, let's just zoom in now on this latest film series you made,
cool.
The Hijacking of Veganism, How Evil's Greatest Trick Fooled You Again, parts 1 through 3. What was it that made you really want to put this out? What were you seeing in the world? Were you responding to something out there? Why were you so spurred to make this very well-produced documentary series, I may add? You put a lot of research in it, and we'll get into it. But first, what was it that kind of spurred you and really made you say, I got to get this information out there?
Cool. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a combination of a couple of things. Okay, because I was part of this observably growing movement of vegan culture, right? In modern society, you're seeing it grow. The number of vegan options are just like swelling over the years, and so the mindset is spreading. Okay, and that's a good thing. But what was really irksome, what was really bothersome, is that I was seeing that this vegan movement was getting swallowed up by this ulterior motive, right? This ulterior agenda, and it was adulterating and corrupting the very movement that I espouse. And so it became personal, right? It becomes very personal, because I'm like, no, this is my camp. You've got this evil influence interfering in the true purity and the true moral rectitude that you get from my camp that I'm in. And I didn't like that. It was very, very, very irksome. So that's one reason. And the other is that one of the first things that the first kind of globally widespread types of propaganda programs that was out there was this growing thing of environmentalism. I caught on to this when I was still a kid. I was still in school when I first started researching about how the environmental movement was created and where it's coming from, starting to get ideas from there. And yeah, that always bothered me. It always bothered me about how this whole global warming thing and the threat of environmentalism. And so that I was already I was already clued into long before I started doing this. And then once I actually became, vegan, and then of course now this later evolution where I'm going only raw, mostly all fruits, right? Then it's the movement was starting to pick up, but I could see the encroachment of that very old propaganda program that had been waged on the human mind since way back in the 60s, 70s, right? So yeah, just seeing that all through all that time and how it was starting to capture veganism and turn it into something that it doesn't have to be. That's the thing. Because right now, you say vegan, you say the word vegan to someone automatically, and I'm sure you can appreciate this. People typically come up with a whole type of or a whole set of conceptions about what that word means and the type of diet that entails. When you say the word vegan, people automatically, their minds automatically go to soy and mock meats and vegan junk food and a whole bunch of stuff that is vegan, but it's the worldly conception of veganism. And I didn't like how that was becoming the staple association of the word vegan. I didn't like that association and the junk food, right? The junk food and the mock meats, because there's an approach to veganism that is simply being a human being. Like just being a human being in its default setting is vegan. It is an appropriate alignment with the natural principles that structure our relationship to food, and you effortlessly do the moral thing by simply being a human being. And it's that I wanted to help to introduce into the idea of veganism, rather than just the mindset of whatever the worldly conception of veganism is right now. And so, yeah, I felt it really resonated with me to make a series like that, and that's what I did. And I hope it helps. I just hope it helps someone out there.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Definitely. You can tell people have a certain conception even when they just hear the word vegan, because I hear people say the vegan diet all the time.
Yeah.
And
The
I
vegan
have
diet.
to
Yeah.
always respond by saying there is no the vegan diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no one. You can
Right.
have a million different, you can drink Coca-Cola all day and that's a vegan diet.
Right.
Or you could eat fruits and vegetables and that's another
Yeah.
type of a vegan diet, but they're completely different. So there is no one the vegan diet. Please stop saying that, everybody.
Yeah. I know. Sometimes I've even seen that in like experimental studies. Their titles were like, we compared a vegan diet with something. Like, what is that? Right? There's
Right.
no vegan diet.
You'd have to have your subjects who were fruitarian, gourmet vegan. You'd have to have all the different types. And I'm not even suggesting there are a finite number of types of veganism. There's infinite.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, veganism is a philosophy. It's a lifestyle. Like you said, it's just being human, having compassion, wanting to do the least harm possible. Everybody can pretty much get behind that. But as soon as people start to look at the mock meat and the factory food, and again, this is like when you say plant-based, right? What I hear is like factory plant,
Yeah.
because an
Yeah.
apple isn't plant-based. It is a plant. It is based on a plant. You
Yeah.
could throw it in the ground and it will turn into a tree.
Yeah.
A few trees, actually.
Sure.
So, yeah, mock meats. And this is really what you're trying to redirect the focus from, is from like everybody's seeing this one thing and conflating the term vegan with, they're trying to take our cows and our freedom. They're trying to get us all to eat soy, like Soylent Green or like some type of factory fake food.
Right.
And here's the thing, people may be right. The agenda may be trying to take your cows because they don't want to deal with all those farting, big liabilities. They'd rather give you factory food because that's easier. You can control that on the blockchain. And then they do want to feed you soy because that's cheap to produce.
Sure.
It's easy to turn into like whatever texture they want and add colorings and flavor. So yes, there is an agenda. And we're going to get into this because we brought receipts. This isn't just like conspiracy theory by any means, right? We're going to get into the Club of Rome and the Tavistock Institute and like actually show you in their own words how these controllers, they do want to take your animals. They do want to track and control every living thing on the planet, which is going to be much easier when we're all eating soy. But we won't be doing that because I won't be eating soy unless it's like backyard soybean, minimally processed. But anyways, I digress. You say you're pulling and tearing the metaphorical leeches off the vegan movement and reveal the evil and pernicious influence for what it is. So yes, there's an agenda to get us to stop eating cows and to start eating synthesized meat.
Right.
But that's not what we're after. And that's not the true essence of veganism, in my opinion. And from what I saw in the documentary, it's not your opinion either.
Hmm.
We have to be aware. This goes back to what you said about the awareness
Yeah.
starting to change one's eating habits. We need awareness in all levels of life. And if
Right.
we are to
Right.
be truly aware of where we are in the world, we do need a knowledge of the Club of Rome and what they write in
Mhm.
their documents. We do need a
Yeah.
knowledge of who is the Tavistock Institute and why do they exist? What types of ideas do they inject into our culture? We do need the awareness that basically every public movement that's been mainstream and has some type of mainstream energy behind it has had the hand of social engineering driving it, no matter
Mhm.
how seemingly pure the movement's intentions. So this can get tough for the environmentalists because they see their passion of environmentalism and wanting to quote go green. It's from a very wholesome and real and passionate place. That it's from a place of love. They want to
Yeah.
see the world in harmony. They don't want to see pollution. They don't want to see suffering. They don't want to see these unnecessary extreme weather events and extreme health events in humans. So, but we have to see that there is being a war waged on nature in all of
Yeah.
its aspects. There's a war waged on education. There's a
Yeah.
war waged on the family. There's a war waged on food, race, gender, pretty much everything that has an element of nature to it. The
Yeah.
controllers, and again, this is not theory, y'all. This is conspiracy history.
Yeah.
Like there are controllers who have actually written in their own words, we are trying to track and control every living thing on the planet. We aim to do this by this year. We aim to employ these types of technologies. We will be modifying the weather. We have been doing it for 100 years. So thank you just for incorporating like the first couple videos in the series were really presenting the information about social engineering. And
Hmm.
that is a real thing. People know there's mechanical engineers, biochemical engineers, and electrical engineers, but
Yeah.
how familiar are you with social engineering, right?
Right.
So, is there
Right.
anything that you want to add just about kind of these natural movements getting corrupted? And even though it may be starting from a pure place, there's
Hmm.
always going to be the hand of the whatever the deep intelligence agencies, no
Yeah.
name kind of agents working for the controllers. They're always coming in and trying to influence, corrupt, and that's
Right.
why it's just not so great to like always get behind these movements that seem organic because there may be some like deeper darker control funding or agenda with this all. So
Exactly.
just as
Yeah.
we dive into this, how important is it to really like look around and see the social control when and where it's happening?
Yeah. Well, the first thing we have to know is that social manipulation and social engineering, it's not a modern day phenomena. So we have to understand that. Okay. Power, hierarchy, authority has always sought to engineer the populace that they're seeking to control. This has always been the case. All right. It's just that in the modern society, okay, in the modern world, okay, post-industrial revolution, all right, starting with the how far would I want to go back to charting this, where this type of advanced technological social engineering really started to come online. I mean, yeah, you could say beginning of the 19th century, right, 1800s, maybe even prior to that. But that's really when the technological version of social manipulation really started to develop and accelerated to a crazy extent in the 1900s, in the 20th century. So the only difference between the old world and the new is that now things are made more expedient for the social engineers because of all the technological ways that we can disseminate information and make it easier to approach a person's mind. Okay, you spoke about the Tavistock Institution. The Tavistock Institution is a psychological think tank, right? It's a think tank that is dedicated to understanding and understanding psychology, and then what they wouldn't really put in words is exploiting that understanding in order to control people's thinking, in order to control masses of, so that's what it is. It's a think tank.
Quick interjection on
Yeah.
Tavistock is it seems like they actually started as an organic organization to study shell shock after, I
Mm.
think it was World War One.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
they really wanted to study the effects that war had on these humans. The soldiers were coming back with these issues. And it was I think, an organic attempt to just understand and help these people.
Yeah.
And then the Rockefeller funding comes in, and that's
Right.
when it gets redirected toward mind control experiments. Okay,
Yeah.
how do we now exploit psychology to use for some type of personal gain?
Right. 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 And now, so we're in the 20th century now, and if people want to get an idea of this whole type of thing, the Rockefeller elite wealthy family banking families injection into the institution of Western society, right? You can look at the Carnegie Endowment of Peace and the exposition that was made about the tax exempt foundations. All right. And what tax exempt foundations are really doing, right? These philanthropic institutions, what they're really doing, why they were established, why Rockefeller and their friends and their associates poured all sorts of money into these tax exempt foundations, into universities, into media broadcasting companies, into just pouring all sorts of money into institutions and what they're doing. And so I talked about this in the first series, in the first part of the series that we're talking about, the hijacking of veganism. That is very eye opening. In terms of just what these institutions are actually doing. And one of the things that was revealed is that the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, they were working towards perpetuating the state of war. So the state of war, the state of economic calamity, all right, that war tends to create. How do we replicate that interminably, right? Indefinitely, right? How do we maintain that as a standard state of affairs for the society, right? This is one of the things that they're working on.
Right. And they need that because wartime energy destabilizes people and their minds. And if you're not in
Yes,
peace and you're always under threat of attack
right,
or threat of losing something big, then you're way more manipulatable. You're way
right,
more easily convinced of pretty much anything.
right.
So that's why they were actually working and still work every day
Yeah, you
to
got it.
keep our
Yeah.
minds in a state of like war.
Of war, right, because and like you said, it's that fear that allows them to be malleable. Okay, and so the Tavistock is all over this, and so they're working the psychological aspect into this, and there's just synthesis among these conspirators, and then they're just aggregating their influence and going about this large orchestrated plan to, in the end, control and manipulate, right? For lots of different reasons. So getting back to what I was saying now, we want this war state to be a standard state of affairs for how the economy is run. So with World War One and World War Two, we kind of learned our lesson. We learned that when we have an obvious, overt enemy to focus our attention on, yeah, it's good. You can still destroy civilizations. You can still have mass casualties and draw up sympathy, and then create more government infrastructure to say, oh, this can never happen again. Therefore, you need government to bolster new agencies so that we can exert this level of control on you both. Okay, so that works. However, what the social engineers, what social manipulators, what psychological professionals recognized, right, is that if you have a less obvious enemy, right, some vague enemy out there that nobody can actually lock onto as a target, it's better because it's hidden, and it means that you have to rely on the authorities to give you information about this enemy, right? It's not someone that you can see or touch or whatever. So they kind of learned their lesson with the overt warfare angle that used to be the default mechanism by which governments or tyrannies could exert control over a population. Like, that was the old method. The new method is this technological type of authority, right? Of authoritarianism. And the type of enemies that we're fighting are vague, out there, not definite, right? Cyber terrorism, right? Environmentalism, right? So this is why the reason I'm going into this is because this is the evolution of the environmental movement. It comes from a yearning of authority to keep you in a state of war and in a state of fear. So with environmentalism, this is something, they thought it was just perfect, because environmentalism is something that will keep you fearful of the world blowing up and disaster, and just like, it's just so grand. There's not much you can do about it. Fear, 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 fear. And it encompasses everybody on the whole damn planet, not just France or not just Russia or just Canada or just the States or whatever. It's everywhere. Perfect. This enemy is just ubiquitous. And because you can't see or detect this enemy definitely, you need the quote unquote experts to come and tell you how to defeat this enemy. And as long as the environment is the enemy, they can continue the state of war by designated as the bad guy, and just constantly doing all sorts of things that keep you in a state of destitution, tax you up the wazoo, regulate you up the wazoo, all sorts of stuff that is just not in your best interest and doesn't actually do anything to solve the problem of pollution on the planet.
Yeah, because in the war against pollution and against runaway climate change, you and your actions are the enemy.
Are the enemy,
right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
your purchasing of whatever meat, or it's your flying on an airplane, or it's you farting that's creating this carbon dioxide that's going to kill the planet. So as long as we think that we are the problem, then it's so much easier for us to say, okay, well, you can go ahead and limit my movement. You can go ahead and tax me. You can go ahead and turn off my electric car whenever you want, because that's probably going to be for the better of the environment. So they've turned us all into thinking that we are the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing we saw in 2020. And we still see it today when people are afraid to get within 6 feet of you because they think you're going to breathe on them. So everyone's become a bioweapon over the last 4 years. And this is just ridiculous. We have to start seeing that we're not the problem. These crazy psychopathic controllers are. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I had to say and I agree, they've really turned us into the enemy. And it's also vague. It's like you're saying, it's very vague. Well, what is my carbon footprint? Right? What does that even mean? Like, you are made of carbon. You're exhaling carbon dioxide 24/7.
Yeah.
So there's a war on carbon. There's a war on you. There's a war on your breath. Right? And this is their tactic, is to make you think that you're the problem and that your biology is somehow destroying this planet.
Right. No, I'm glad you interjected to give that little bit of detail. Yeah, it's so important, right? They turn you into the enemy. They've got this global threat, but now the casualties, it's like they just turn you against each other. Why do we even need a real enemy? They're just gonna go to war against each other, like we saw in 2020, and with this environmental movement, right? It's the same thing. It's human beings are the problem. Human beings are the problem. And it goes back to this, and I talked about this in the lecture series. So, if you haven't seen it, people can check that out. It's this old Malthusian idea that population growth, okay, the threat of population growth, this ties into this. And the establishment jumped on this theory and gave it a huge push, started promulgating it out into literature, disseminating it so that people could get this idea of population growth going way out of control and not being sustainable, So they take that and they incorporated that into the general environmental movement, right? As a standard idea. So they come in a package. So they've made you the enemy. They've convinced you that humans are like viruses. We just growing and there's no room on the planet. There's plenty of bloody room on the planet. The Earth is there's so much space on planet Earth right now. It's just that we're concentrated in cities, and and when they make their scary documentaries, they show like a busy street in the heart of Hong Kong or something. Population explosion. I'm like, yeah, okay, just focus your camera just anywhere else in the rural areas, and there's nothing going on, right? It's not space that we're running out of. It's just that social manipulators are effing with your brain, with your mind, right? That's what's happening.
And they're smart, man, because they're doing this for generations and generations. This is not new. This whole idea that we have to limit our carbon emissions is not new. The Club of Rome, who's a major high level think tank, they published Limits to Growth in 1972, which is a document everyone likes to look at because they actually do write in there that we're going to make the environment the tool through which we can gain control. Because if everyone's afraid of either global warming or global cooling, and we do notice it changes. You point out in the documentary series that in the 70s it was all about global cooling. And there are how many newspaper articles did you see that said the world's going to freeze over by the year 2000? Paris is going to be full of ice, just completely frozen. Yes. Obviously, none of that happened, and they actually just changed that from global cooling to global warming, and now it's just climate change.
It's just climate change.
It's just anything can change, and these extreme weather events are because of these emissions, and we need to cut the carbon tax. And then that begs the whole study into weather modification, which we don't have to get into. That's a contentious subject, but I talk about it all the time. I've been studying it for 10 years. I've been GoProing the sky time lapse for a long time. What's happening now with these extreme weather events is not normal. It is not a product of this, the last 100 years of industrialization, unless you actually include the weather modification they're actually doing, in which case, yes, it is a product of that. They are changing the climate. This is man-made. It's not your fault, listener. You're not the one flying up there releasing chemicals into the sky to block out the sun. It's not your fault. Right. You're not a burden on the world. I want all my listeners to know that. We need you guys. We need everybody.
Yeah. There's a government document that was released by Freedom of Information Act, and it showed how there were high-ranking government officials talking about this is in the 60s. Okay, this is in the 60s, and they were thinking of ways to use weather modification, right? To use weather modification in order to, crash planes and just to wage war. Right? My point is that weather modification has been on the table in terms of government strategy for way longer than it's been in public mind and in the public awareness as an entity.
Right. And for anyone who doubts that, go to Jim Lee's website. I think it used to be called weathermodificationhistory.com, but now it's Climate Viewer. He has the most extensive timeline of weather modification technology, public patents, and information in the world. So go check that out. If you're still a weather mod denier.
Yeah. I mean, HAARP is probably the most obvious thing that'll come up on the forefront when you look at weather modification. This array, it's been up for decades. It's existed forever, and we think they're just not using it. They're using it, right?
Totally.
Yeah. But okay, just to finish off what I was saying, what I started saying earlier. Yeah. So they've got this influence now. So they've got the population thing. You can go read First Global Revolution. You can read Population Bomb. You can read any of the Trilateral Commission's literature. All right, any of this UN sanctioned literature. It's all over there. It's all over it, right? They love it, and they freely tell you in slightly deceptive wording exactly what is intended, right? So they admit this. So anyway, you have all these influences, and now this environmental movement, okay, which is a replacement for war. It's a surrogate for war, and what it's done, as I conclude in this lecture series, is that they've simply roped in veganism as just another way to apprehend another chunk of the population and allow their ideology to work towards the end that they wanted right from the beginning. Okay, so that's why this is so pernicious, and it's just like, it just was so irksome, and I really really wanted to get the right idea across about how to frame the relationship of veganism to this environmental movement in general. Okay. And I wanted, again, right from the beginning, we were talking about categorization and not conflating two things together. If we can correctly do that, then we'll understand this whole thing. And I just did not like how the establishment is willingly playing a deceptive trick on you by conflating pollution and climate change together as similar entities. They're not, right? Climate change, what does that mean? The climate changes every second that you're alive, and it's never the same from second to second. So when they shift the target from global cooling, which they know doesn't work, and by the way, when you see them just shifting goalposts like this and hoping you don't care or notice, you know you're being played for a fool. Like, they shift from global cooling to not global mediuming. No, they go the complete opposite. Oh, no, it's global heating, global warming now. And now they dropped that because they got embarrassed throughout the 21st century, the beginning of the 21st century, which we're in now. They just got embarrassed because none of it was happening. They were getting proven wrong. The ClimateGate scandal got released. All the emails were leaked, showing that they were manipulating and fudging data up the wazoo. It's one of my favorite expressions. Just manipulating all sorts of data to convince government officials at these UN climate change conferences that the world was actually doing something that it was not really doing. So this, again, the lid has been blown on this. They tried again to do more data fudging in another ClimateGate scandal. There's all sorts of information there that you can study. So yes, they've roped in veganism and they've made it part and parcel of environmentalism, and they're packaging it together in order to technologically control society on levels that were not available prior to this level of control, prior to this propaganda warfare. And it's very dangerous, and people need to know about it. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Beautiful, man. I fully support it. It's almost like we need to reclaim the term vegan and truly elevate it to a level that it deserves to be at, where I don't see Coca-Cola and fake meat as vegan. I don't, because if we're truly not trying to cause harm to animals, then what if we eat something that causes harm to us? Is that truly vegan? Right. Is vegan junk food actually vegan? Right. If it's causing harm, right, to the person eating it. But then people will they'll defend that by saying, well, I'm consenting to that. This is my choice. I can do whatever I want to my body, which I fully agree with.
Yeah.
But there is an objective residue left over from eating certain foods that your body has to take care of. If that's a toxic residue, then you're adding burden, and you can make an argument that you're harming the body. So this is a deep philosophical question. We don't have to answer it, but I'm just posing it. Is junk food vegan actually vegan? And when two people who eat exclusively fruits and vegetables are, we're not thinking about fake meat. We don't care about fake meat. Great, it can help you in a transition to move away from certain things, but eventually we just want to rely on grapes that can grow on the vine in your backyard. We want to rely on bananas, straight out of the ground. These are the types of foods that we want to bring back into the consciousness. And guys, again, it's not just grapes and bananas, because there's such an endless abundance of fruit. It's not even funny. I mean, go travel to the tropics if you have to. You're gonna start seeing the longans and the lychees and the rambutans and the sugar apples and the atamoyas and the breadfruit. I think breadfruit's another one that I got from your channel. You went into a grocery store and was like, "Hey, I found this breadfruit. It's soft.
Yes.
Let's eat it." And I'm like, "What the heck? I never even knew you could eat that." And guess what, folks? Right. It tastes like bread dipped in sweet banana custard. Is basically what breadfruit raw tastes like. So anyways, it's not restrictive. We need to be elevating the vegan message. Well, I think what you're doing is great. Is step one, okay, be aware of how they're trying to fool you. Mm-hmm. It all goes back to awareness. You have to see what's actually going on before we can then embrace the high vibrating raw fruits and vegetables. I think. I mean, maybe for young people, what I'm noticing, Eli, now is that a lot of the younger generation, kids in their 20s and early 20s, they get it. A lot of the young generation, they're like us. They have the information we have, but they didn't have to go through all the crazy dark night of the soul to get it. Like I feel like I spent 10 years learning what one kid can actually learn in a day on TikTok sometimes. And he just, all right, I'm cool. I'll make a shift. I don't have to eat any of this globalist crap. Sure. And here we are slogging through it because we were just, our parents were baby boomers and they were so propagandized. And then we were so propagandized. But now in this age where we're like fully in this technocratic nightmare, like with, I don't even like saying the C word. I'm going to say 2020. People who were like trying to go to college and trying to live a free life in the year 2020 and they're young, they're like, nah, this ain't right. Something's wrong. So they're finally opening up. Question. What would you say to someone who is like truly and rightfully concerned about the environment? They're actually like a true environmentalist at heart. They want to see the animals thrive. They do not want to see pollution. But they're at these rallies and protests and they're fully bought into the mainstream greenwashing.
Right.
What would you say to them besides just sending them your, video link of this new documentary series? Is there anything that you would say or maybe ask them to get them thinking and to maybe start to peel away from like this mainstream greenwashing and come into a more authentic alignment with nature?
Yeah. One thing that you could bring up is that the institutions that you are protesting to in order to make these changes, you have to realize that those are the very same institutions that you're protesting against as causal for all the same problems, right? If you can recognize that, you'll see that there's an element of counterproductivity in clamoring to government to clean things up when it has been government that fully endorses all the ways that we have destroyed our environment and is actually working against you every second to make things worse, right? Like there's also the the problem reaction solution type of thing, where the reason that people might be up in arms about some sort of calamity, some sort of trouble, some sort of wildfire, whatever it is, some sort of social upheaval. It's also good to recognize that very often the reason that these things are sparked or ignited is because the institution has actually created that problem deliberately so as to spark outrage. And so in the outrage, in the tension, right, that is created, government steps in once again and creates the synthesis, creates the problem that they always wanted to create in the beginning, in the first place, but they needed a catastrophe of some sort in order to make it right. So one thing I would say to that person is that, okay, just, you have to also recognize that there is a way to make these changes, but you'll always be led a little bit astray if you're trying to make those changes by petitioning government and other institutions to do it for you, because they are the ones that have actually caused the problems. They're the reasons why you're here in the first place. And so asking them to, it's like the mafia goes and blows away vast swaths of your neighborhood, and then you go and petition to the mafia, hey, no, there's a different approach. There's something else that should be done, right? They might just not listen to you. They might just continue to be the mafia, right? Something like that. Yeah, yeah. So it's just awareness of the fact that the enemy that they're fighting against is a bit more expansive than you probably realize, and they're manipulating kind of both sides of the field. And there would be other ways to go about making fundamental changes in constructive changes towards cleaning up the planet, right? And I can tell you right now, it doesn't have anything to do with paying a little bit of extra, for climate or for carbon, reducing carbon footprint by paying an additional 20% on your train ticket or something stupid like that. That will do nothing. Okay, that will do absolutely nothing, because carbon is necessary for life. It's been seeing massive upheavals and deficits, and just in this continuous flux all throughout time, from the beginning of time, all throughout now. Carbon has been doing its thing. Carbon levels have been doing their thing, going up, going down, being neutral. Heat has been going up, temperatures going up, going down. This flux, this ebb and flow, just like life, in your experience, in my experience, has all these ups and downs and vicissitudes that we can frame in the perspective of our lives. There are grand cosmic scales whose lengths of time beggar belief. They're so lengthy you can't even appreciate them in any conceivable way, because we just don't have lifespans that extend that long. But they exist. And just because we can't be aware of them doesn't mean that they don't exist. And so these things, these patterns, these weather patterns have gone on forever. And so, nothing is going to change by issuing carbon taxes to a government. It's not going to change these grand cosmic cycles that are far more influential in terms of what affects climate on the planet than you running electricity for your house. Right? Like, not even comparable. Not even comparable.
Yeah. No, and when we see the smart homes, the smart technology working their way more and more into everybody's lives, it starts to make a lot of sense that you'd want to have a smart thermostat or a smart car that can be remotely restricted. And we actually saw this in the United States. I think just last summer, they were having some heat, some really hot days in Colorado, and they limited people's access to using their air conditioning in their own house.
Air conditioner. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this happened in America, where everyone thinks is the most freest state. But if you bring smart technology into your home, you're basically asking the globalist technocrats to control your life.
That's sickening. That's sickening, man.
Oh
my God, that's so creepy. But that's what we invite. That's when we invite. When we jump in line, jump on the bandwagon of this environmental movement, and how if you go vegan, like the UN says you should, using the vegan approach that the UN says you should, you will be saving the environment. They have to give you a badge of recognition, right? They have to make you feel noble and virtuous about doing it. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it, right? But yeah, cutting off the your thermostat, your air conditioner, that's next level encroachment in your right to conduct your life as you see fit, right?
Totally. And for anyone who still doubts that these controllers are actually working extremely hard to limit our freedom, to track and trace us, check out the documentary series that Eli has on his YouTube channel, The Free Melon Society. The documentary is called The Hijacking of Veganism, How Evil's Greatest Trick Fooled You Again, parts 1 through 3. I think all the parts are important to see because they build off each other. The first part is really understanding the system of social engineering that's been in place and that's been evolving over a very, very long time. So this is nothing new. And Eli expertly shows that in this series. So please go check that out if you need some more background, or you want to understand the environmental movement a bit more today. You want to understand what true veganism is versus the fake ass veganism, maybe we could call
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
And so we're nearing the end of 2 hours here, but I want to ask you some stuff about your YouTube channel and the Free Melon Society. The first thing I noticed when I came across your channel was, oh, that's a play on Freemason.
Yeah.
It's even got the
Yeah.
square and the compass, imagery. Free melon, Freemason is pretty obvious if you're tuned into that symbology, that symbolism.
Yep.
That kind of that piqued my interest because
Mm.
I was studying occult. I was studying some of the Western mystery traditions. And, we can get into a whole talk on Freemasonry. I don't really want to today.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people think it's just pure evil no matter what. A lot of people think it's has a lot of spiritual truths to offer us, and that it's been hijacked, just like every other good organic system
Yeah.
out there has been hijacked by darker forces. So
Mm.
we don't have to get into that, but I did want to ask you a little bit about some of your like esoteric studies, and I just want to demystify the esoteric a little bit, because I think what I notice in your work is like the foundation is natural law.
Yes.
Your whole thing, and mine too, is to realign with nature. That nature as it exists has all the answers for us, and that all we need to do is come back in line with it, and some of these problems are going to start to just naturally dissolve. Could you speak a little bit on natural law? Is that what you are trying to harmonize with in your studies of the occult? And why even look to the occult? Why even look to the mystery traditions for the answers on nature? Why don't we just go outside in the garden?
Right. 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 Yeah. Great question. Okay. So the reason why it would be a good idea to study natural law, okay, to study the occult, is because we, to this day, complain as human beings about a lot of problems that beset the human experience. Many, many, many problems and issues that we deal with, that our minds wrestle with as a byproduct of living in this world. And in order to get at the answers to some of our complex human problems, you cannot get access to the answers to those problems by simply scrutinizing the plane of effects here on the physical world. Okay? Because causality, very often, in terms of natural laws and principles, resides elsewhere, higher above the plane of effects here in the physical world. We're talking about structures of thought, structures of energy that are causal, all right, in terms of being agents in how things come to effect in our lives, in the human experience. Okay, why does evil happen? Why do people act in such and such a way? Why is dieting so difficult? Right? Why should I not eat this if my body tells me that I like it? Right? Why such? Okay, there's all sorts of questions. Right? Why am I dealing with this health trouble? Why is it that I always seem to attract bad boyfriends or bad girlfriends? Why am I so unlucky? What, blah, 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 blah. Okay. All sorts of questions that have plagued humanity from time immemorial. All right. So why study natural law? Why study the occult? Because one of the things that we are currently not really online with is the fact that in the energetic world around us, okay, the world of energies, mental energies, emotional energies, thought energies, all these types of different energies. There exists hard, rigid, mathematical, precise structure. Okay? Things that we think are subjective or are just human ideas that float around vaguely in this flowy, wavy type of atmosphere that is subject to change at any human being's whim. Okay, this is the way that we think of things like. I'll just use it as an example: morality. All right, just as an example. What natural law does, teaches us in reforming our thinking, is it introduces you to the idea, to the recognition that guiding principles and guiding laws of operation have a concrete, objective existence in reality. And they are no more subjective or abstract or non-existent, right? They're not non-existent at all. They're just as real as, let's just say, gravity is for us.
Right, or the physical law of heat or something like that.
Or exactly, or heat conduction, or magnetism, or whatever things that we can see their effects very clearly. All right, natural laws guide those operations, and they also guide and structure all the operations of higher relationships, of higher operations of mind and thought in the human experience.
Yeah, and those higher thoughts like morality, for example, right?
Right, exactly. Like morality, right? Okay, so long as we believe that these things don't have a concrete existence and they are subjective and that we can just make it up as we go, so long as we feel that way, we will be tossed to and fro by the consequences of violating strict laws. Just like a tyrannical king, for example. Now, this is kind of a bad analogy because the laws of man are not the same as laws of nature. Okay, I'm just using a very loose analogy. You might disagree with the laws of some tyrannical king that you need to surrender your firstborn daughter to the king for his rampant sexual pleasures, right? You might disagree with that law and rule, but if you disobey, the king throws you into the tower and locks you up, and so you incurred the consequences of violating the laws of the ruler, okay? Natural laws work just like that. Now, natural laws are not cruel, though. They're not. They only do the correct thing. They only operate on what is right and true. Okay, so they cannot do wrong, but they are just as binding and they are just as strict and they are just as harsh in their implementation of either benefits or consequences, depending on whether you obey or disobey. And these natural principles guide all operations of life. So, why is it helpful for us to be familiar with them? Because you will have a much more sure footing on how to answer all the complex questions of life. You will be able to make better decisions for your life. You will be able to understand you will be able to understand why consequences come your way and when they don't. You will be able to fit them into a very definite law of operation so that you're able to predict with more accuracy what will happen in your future, because you're simply plugging variables into a formula, into a precise law, and reaping the effects or reaping the consequences if you don't obey those laws. So most of the operations of nature operate outside of our perception, our ability to perceive them. So the occultist, right, the adept, the mystic, right, these are individuals that have set about a study in uncovering and recognizing the laws of reality, the simple laws of reality that have always existed, that we were always subject to, but they are simply trying to understand their operation. And in so doing, are able to unfold higher aspects and higher qualities of life for themselves and for the development and spiritual growth of the world around them. They're able to understand more. I'll put it very simply in a sentence. They're able to understand God in closer alignment, right? They're able to align themselves closer to God. If I can just use that as a general term for all of created reality, all of existence, and the knowledge of the self, knowledge of the world, that's nature, that's God. So the more you can understand about how God operates, the better quality human being you will be for yourself and for everybody around you.
Great. I love that. And I can see that too in the mystery traditions and the occult. They do teach this philosophy of natural law. They do answer these questions,
Mm-hmm.
about why do bad things keep happening to me?
Right.
And maybe not directly, but in as it is affected in the plane of cause and effect.
Yes.
Every effect has its cause, every cause has
Yes.
its effect, and we
Yes.
can't escape that. I'll just give a quick example of how Freemasonry, through its symbolism, can get us closer to God. And I'll just use the quick example of your logo, and it's the square and compass. The
Mm-hmm.
square represents man, because you don't see squares in nature much. Whenever you see square shaped things, square shaped rocks and buildings, a man had to do that, because God's shape is the circle, which is why they use the compass. That's the tool that is used to make a circle. So
Right.
it's the compass superimposed over the square, and that's important too, is that the compass supersedes the square. The compass
Mm-hmm.
is more important.
Yeah.
God's law, the circle, is more important than man's law, but they have to exist together.
Of course.
So Masons are builders, with stone masonry,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're using tools, and a lot of the symbolism of the tools, like the plumb line and the square and the compass, these all teach us valuable lessons about how to live in alignment, how
Mm-hmm.
to live right. If you think about the word
Correctly.
right, well,
Yeah.
that's in the square. The square is a tool that creates right angles,
Yes.
and right has always
Yes.
meant just and good. Oh,
Yeah.
that was right. Yeah, right answer. Right, that means that's
Mm-hmm.
correct. And we forget that there's an objectivity of right and wrong sometimes. We think everything's so gray. I
Yes.
mean, they've done a great job of convincing us that everything's subjective and morals are subjective, and you can pretty much be whatever you want. And I mean, career wise, be whatever you want, but you
Sure.
are born
Sure.
into you, and there's not much you can change about that.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
anyways, the square and the compass teaches us sort of the relationship between man and God. And ultimately, I see that is what the occult, which just means hidden. Occult doesn't mean evil. Occult doesn't mean satanic. Occult, literally, if you go to the Latin root of that word, it means hidden, concealed from view. Studying those traditions and the mysteries can open our minds to natural law through symbolism, through the literature, through the rituals too. I would just say we got to be careful about when these types of traditions are being hijacked and when they've been corrupted by darker forces, because there's so much of that. But we see that in everything, right? We see that in any good system, there's going to be the hand of evil kind of trying to work it like a puppet.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Like notorious influences are always going to be out there, and when it comes to the mysteries, the mystery traditions, you're talking about people who have a very deep knowledge of reality, and sometimes they would interact with and come in close association with rulership, ruling authorities, other influential individuals, right? And so there's this mixing now throughout time where, yeah, it starts to become more likely that ulterior motives can use a secret society, a mystery school, or use the information, or use a notable person schooled in that knowledge, can use their influence to promote a business idea, to promote some other thing that is more in line with greed and ulterior motives. And so, yeah, over time, what happened was this body of laws, okay, body of information. I'll just say body of information, right? This information regarding the truth and reality about the world we live in, the universe we live in. Forces have gained access to that information, and simply use it in a way that is not in our best interest. And that's what we've seen with the current expression of Freemasonry, right? It's all based on a set of teachings spanning way back to the mystery traditions of antiquity. trying to teach people about the laws of reality, just reality, right? I don't even want to say mysticism because it gets people thinking all there. Just the laws of reality and everything that entails your reality, and that includes things like thought and feeling and all the types of energies that create change. Like if there is a change, any change, like I'm thinking of an apple and then I think of a pear a second later. That's a change in reality, right? Something in some way, in some world changed. Okay. If there's nothing going on in my mind, right? It's just blackness. And then all of a sudden, a couple of sparks flit by, or a unicorn just flies by, or whatever. That's a change. And if change is happening, it means that there is an energy at work. Some energy has to power a change from one state to another. Has to, by law. Okay. So when we're dealing with energies, we have to realize that energies operate under law. They have to operate under strict guiding principles, because if they didn't, the consequences would be sheer and utter chaos. For people that have a hard time with the objective reality of things like right and wrong and whatever, imagine for a second that the world of emotions, the world of thoughts, had no laws at all. It was just chaos. It was just random. What that would mean is, for example, just to make it very obvious, you could wake up one morning and, like, I'm a guy, I'm a dude, right? I could wake up. I'll use myself as an example. I could wake up one morning and just, be attracted to the opposite sex, be attracted to women. And then the next day after that, I would wake up and I'd be attracted to bows and arrows, or sexually. Like I would have a sexual fascination with a telephone one minute, and then a picture frame the next, women the third, and then I don't know, skunks the next. It would just be chaos, right? The energies would not be rigid, right? They wouldn't be set. I could toss a ball up in the air one day and it would come down. The next day it would turn into a leaf or a platypus or something. It would just be, without structure, the universe wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make any coherent sense. And your thinking wouldn't make sense either. You would go out and try to buy an apple or two apples, and then you'd buy one in addition to the one you have, and somehow you'd get six apples. Things wouldn't make sense. Like, reality would just, so it has to work by laws in all its shapes and all its flavors.
Yeah. And you can really see this too when we talk about morality, because people might argue that it's moral for humans to farm and eat animals. People might argue that that's normal and that's totally moral, totally within our moral right to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you suggest that you can go and take their dog, or that you can go and take, a member of their family and breed them to eat them, they're going to be like, no, that's not right.
Yeah, that's
right. Mine. And maybe they'll argue property, but once you start saying, well, okay, I'm raising my own children to eat them, this can be completely absurd. The fact that, keeping any living being to eat them is like, it starts feeling really weird when you suggest that you can do it with humans and dogs.
Right.
And that's another example of, like, people choose their own moral subjectivity when it suits them, when it's convenient for them.
Yeah.
When it's convenient to be attracted to a telephone, they'll go and change their mind. But what you're saying, and what natural law teaches and these occult traditions teach, is that no, there are rules to the universe, and we're just learning how to see them, right?
Yeah, of course. Rules. If I could simplify it, it's just rules apply to more than you think. If that helps people understand. And once you realize that, then it's like an aha moment, because you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was simply violating rules prior to understanding them, and that's why I'm getting punished for them, just like a school teacher will punish you if you violate rules. Nature works in the same way. We can't help but reproduce the operations of nature when we structure society because we're born in that image. It's age old biblical teaching of being born in the image of God. You cannot help but reproduce principles of nature in how you structure reality, right? Taking, aerial footage of cities and they resemble organic structures. The cosmos taken from certain photography looks like atoms on a smaller scale. Everything is just a reflection of itself. And so, yeah, you have to realize that these rules govern everything. And so the more of them you can understand, the better you can conduct yourself in life. When we talk about diet a lot and health and wellness and detoxing and all that, the sooner people realize that diet is not as subjective as they might have thought. And again, this is the reason why humans have basically tread a path of destruction against themselves in terms of diet forever, because they didn't realize that there are rules and laws to diet and eating that you cannot escape from. Go, anybody, anybody out there, go and take a look at the past, any king, ruler in the past 500 years from any country, any place on the planet, right? And just see how they died. Go through the king lists, go through the prince lists, go through any ruler from history. Just see how they died. Diabetes, heart complications, cancers, boils, tumors, they're just all throughout history, way before modern society, getting dominated by natural law. Dominated because they were indulgent in things that violated the rules of physiology. And we're doing the exact same things today. The difference between now and then is that everybody can live like a king. And so we're getting dominated by natural consequences, just like all the kings of our history, except everybody's is getting crushed by these consequences today. And so you have to realize that there are rules to the game, and it seems simple, but as long as you just follow them, nature won't take any issue to you living your life and eating how you want, right?
I love it, and I fully agree. I'm glad you brought it full circle to back to what we eat, because there are most definitely rules to, I would say, all humans. People might argue, oh, different blood types, different cultures. Yes, there's subtle differences amongst the human race, but we're all frugivores.
Right.
And there are rules to being a frugivore, which is that if you eat something against the biology which you're primed to take into your body, then you might be able to take it and create energy from it and poop out the rest, but it's going to be taxing on the body. There's going to be an inevitable effect of eating certain foods. There's an inevitable effect of eating white bread.
Yeah.
It's the digestive response that happens every single time you eat white bread. And I'm learning that more and more now. Every time I put a piece of food in my mouth, I realize this has a concrete, unavoidable effect. Every single time I eat something, my body will get signals to start releasing juices and enzymes, and it's going to leave either a residue or a very minimal one, if in the case of watery fruits, for example.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's definitely the cause and effect when it comes to food. And we're all seeing that because so many of us are sick. And if we just looked at our eating habits and were brave enough to check those and maybe try some other ones, then maybe we'll start to see experientially that, we are the masters of our destiny. Exactly. We can change the effect by changing the cause. I don't have to live in pain. I don't have to live in suffering. I don't have to live against my nature. I don't have to live immorally. I don't have to lie, because again, everything we do has its effect. Eli, this has been a great conversation, brother.
This has been amazing. I know. I really appreciate this. I was going to leave one last final thought there. So just again, bringing it all together, talking about rules, right? Obey the rules, essentially. And if you want just one last example of how this can really set in your mind, we've discovered that in terms of athletics, okay, we'll use a different example here. In terms of athletics, mental rehearsal can act in almost the exact same way that physical rehearsal does. If you want to get good at shooting a basketball and you simply rehearse in your mind shooting a basketball, lo and behold, you will be better at the mechanics, the neurological pattern of shooting a basketball. You'll actually get better at it just by doing mental rehearsal as if you physically rehearsed. It's incredible, this neurological connection. So we can conceive of practice in our mind. Not only can you get better at basketball, you can actually get stronger by simply doing whatever strength challenge in your mind only, no physical practice whatsoever, right? This is something that we've discovered about the connection between our thinking and our physical expression, okay? So no physical practice, just thinking, all right? And you can get faster, stronger, and more coordinated in any particular movement that you set your mind to rehearsing in your mind's eye, okay? Now, imagine, for example, the consequences of there being no rules to the realm of thought. What would happen to that experience that we have confirmed is part of our reality, all right? The consequences would be you would mentally rehearse something and you would get better at something completely different, right? If there were no rules, if it was just random chaos up there, right? That's what you would expect. You would expect to think of shooting a basketball, and then in reality, you would get worse at canoeing. Like it would make no sense. It would make no sense. Okay, so these are think of the consequences of there being no rules to the realm of thought and emotion. The consequences are far more scary than if there are rules out there governing behavior. That gives you order. That gives you the ability to predict. That gives you the ability to conduct yourselves properly. If there are no rules, like most of you guys out there believe, then the consequences of that are complete and utter chaos. And it's good to know that so that you can be on board with correct thinking and conduct your lives accordingly.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if you were playing a game and didn't know the rules. Hey, come over. We're doing board game night. Hey, well, all right, cool. Can someone explain to me the rules? No, don't worry about it. We're just going to destroy you in this game. Right? So there are actually people out there taking advantage of the fact that you don't know the rules to the game you're playing.
Yes.
So whether it's through exercise or diet or the mystery traditions or just living every day, anything can teach you the rules of the game. We have to be open to them. I think it does help to look to some of the classic texts of psychology and history to help us kind of get on board and open our eyes. The more I read, the more I can start to see the rules of the game. We're also creating it every day with our corpus, with your YouTube channel. People can learn about the rules of the universe just by checking that out, by listening to podcasts. So let's all keep working toward that. I think if we all understood the rules of the game, we could actually all play and all win. We could all play this game beautifully and everyone can win. We can all experience the abundance and the benefits of nature herself or itself or whatever you want to call it. Eli, we're out of time, but I still have so many more questions for you, man. I think we might have to do another one because I want to ask you about astral projection and, smoothies and just different. We can get into so many other questions. So, but for now, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining me today, brother. Just thank you again.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. This has been very, very well worth my time. I hope that the listeners got something out of this, and I hope you continue to inspire and influence your audience and continue to work on the great work. Everyone's working on their particular slice of life in whatever particular area is most attractive to them to spend their energies. And the more of us do that, the more we make fundamental changes to the betterment of the world around us and to unfolding spiritual development and conscious evolution, wherever we go. And so I'm always happy to contribute to that if I can, if it's in my power to do so. And with you getting me on your platform, we're doing exactly that together here. So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And I look forward to the next one. We'll do it again.
Right on, man. Hey, and let everybody know where they can find you. You got a website. Drop some links.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you can find me 2 places. It's pretty basic with me. You can find me on my YouTube channel, which is the Free Melon Society. All right, so you can go to that YouTube. You can go to YouTube and you can find me there. And then my Instagram, you can find me at freemelon_Eli. That's my Instagram account, and I'll upload little bits and pieces and little nuggets of my life and exercise, a lot of exercise stuff, and just little tips and ideas on my Instagram account. So those are the 2 places you can find me. And if people have questions, you can always email me at any time. All that information is on the channel. It's on my Instagram. So I do consultations as well. So if people want some one-on-one time, then I open myself up to consultations and go through whatever it is that you need help with. So Instagram and YouTube, basically.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thanks so much, Eli Martyr. Thank you to everybody listening. And we'll see you on the next episode. Peace, y'all.
Take care, guys.
Head over to sethbalin.com/library to download a bunch of free PDF files related to the topics we discussed today. I have multiple books available that are now in the public domain on health and healing, and classic works on natural hygiene, in addition to my own original writings on health, diet, fasting, and more. There's a section in the library on conspiracy where you can learn more about social engineering and the main institutions driving it. Also, check out the sections on consciousness and the occult. I highly recommend checking out the PDF called What on Earth is Happening, episodes 1 through 10, which are my detailed notes of the first 10 episodes of Mark Passio's podcast called What on Earth is Happening. And quick shout out to Mark Passio. He is someone who greatly inspired both me and today's guest, Eli. So if you want to dive deeper into truth, self-knowledge, moral objectivism, and some of the barriers to understanding natural law, I recommend digging into that document. There are plenty of reading materials over at sethbalin.com/library. And if reading isn't your thing, stay tuned to the Radical Health Podcast, because I will be releasing 1 new episode every week where we deep dive into all sorts of these topics. I'm going to be doing more conversations, more book reviews, more rants. And as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for being you. Thanks for existing. Peace, y'all.